Hey guys, Cody here. Welcome back to another episode of Nerdcast brought to you by Nerdcore+comics. If you're listening to us now, then you made it over to our YouTube channel. So please subscribe and drop a like and be a part of this Nerdcast with us. Today we're going to be covering Season 3 of Young Justice, which is called Outsiders. Sadly, Aaron couldn't be with us today, so you're just going to be hearing me solo. So you might as well just pack it in now. But if you want to push through, that's awesome as well. So getting into Young Justice, we are at Season 3. Great season. They really built. There's a lot of character development. A huge fan. I've been watching it since Season 1 dropped, which was years ago, up spanning this whole thing. I think the first season dropped 2011, 2012, I believe. And this is obviously developed by Brandon Vietti and Greg Wiseman. The first season we dealt with kind of like a teenage cast more so. They're coming together. They're joining the team. And it was like a lot of people you're really comfortable knowing and who you already see and kind of were knowledgeable about. Then we jump into Season 2. We kind of went pretty heavy into more so like space adventures type stuff, pushed out a little bit with the Reach. And I think it was like heavily centered around the Scarab and Jaime Reyes, Blue Beetle, the second incarnation of the Blue Beetle. They left a lot of, I don't want to say, I don't know, like untied ends basically, but it's it showed like okay, you catch things like there was a room dedication to the personnel who were lost, and you could see Jason Todd was in there. You could see the old Blue Beetle, Ted Cord, stuff like that. So there's just a lot of things that you thought they would touch upon in Season 3. Number one, I thought they would touch on the loss of Wally West. Did he go into the Speed Force? Did he pass away? They don't really go into where he's at. You see spoilers for him being in the third season, but it's not like you think. If you want to go check it out, obviously this is very spoiler heavy, so get out now while you still can. The only time you really see Wally West in this is when he's touched on for more so it's a facade made up by Zatanna and Miss Martian just kind of like appease Tigress or Artemis, just to kind of set her straight. She was struggling with it. She didn't get a chance to really say goodbye, so that's pretty much why you see that. So I'm just going to kill that now because I know a lot of people, that was their number one question, is Wally West going to be in this? What's going on? There's your answer. So getting an actual build of the season, we had a lot of development. So the show is heavily centered around the 3 rotating plots, which covers like metahuman trafficking, second plot, which is like Darkseid's attempts to obtain the anti-life equation, and a setup of new characters and teams which ultimately affect the political essence of this season. Behind, especially in the second season when like Godfrey was like freaking out and like putting heavy emphasis on the Justice League is bad and they're messing up and stuff. Well, in this one we get Granny Goodness. And I know you're thinking, yes, this is the same Granny Goodness who is like leader of, I believe they're called the Furies on Apocalypse, or strictly work for Darkseid, plays heavily into that. Now, while we have the 3 main plots, which I covered, which were the metahuman trafficking, Darkseid's attempts to use the anti-life, find the anti-life equation, and the setup of new characters, we also have little subplots. And this shoved in a lot of things that were brought back from like old Titans comics, actually like the only memorable one, which is basically the Judas Contract. So you have people like that. So in this one, you're getting Geoforce, and you're also getting Tara, who basically was heavily implied was kind of sleeping with Slade Wilson, which is disgusting because he's like an old man and she's like 15. But they're both in this. They're from Markovia, and you basically just have a small subplot of her kind of working for Deathstrokes. You'll see that in this plot. Kind of didn't really do a whole lot until the very end, and you expected her to actually like act on it. She actually pulls out and like actually listens and takes the side of the Justice League and the actual Teen Titans. So it's not like in the comic book where she actually ends up, passing away. There's also a heavy shove on Batman Incorporated, and in those comics, just like Batman is always, he's kind of for himself. So within this season, Batman and all the members of the Bat family, including like Dick Grayson, Tim Drake, you don't really see a lot from him, but they're all in on it too. Oracle, which is Barbara Gordon, is in this. Every member of the Bat family is kind of like underhandedly, like kind of like going covert ops kind of stuff. They're doing the same exact thing, infiltration style, just like the Reach did last season. So it's not really heavily accepted, but at the same time, members of the Justice League are in on this and believe it too. So like Wonder Woman, she's kind of in on it. She knows of it. She's all for it. So they kind of are lying to the other members of the Justice League, the Teen Titans, and they have a lot of covert groups in this. So basically, Nightwing and those members are operating a small group that kind of stays in the shadows. Superboy, he's kind of benched a little bit. He's living more of a suburban life. He's kind of working on motorcycles and hangs out with Miss Martian. They are engaged in this, and basically he's on the roster whenever Dick really needs him, and he'll bring him in. He had a lot of character development. The first one, he was a screaming and punching shit. The second one, I went a little further in a relationship, like, and what happened with like Miss Martian and like trying to like change his mind and stuff. But in this one, it's all settled. He's actually one of the most zen characters, which is kind of cool. He and Superman have a pretty good relationship, like calling each other brothers. He is getting married to Miss Martian, so he actually asks Clark Kent in this. You don't see Superman a lot, but when you do, they're meaningful. But he was kind of brushed off. But he does ask him to be his best man, so that was kind of cool seeing that. There's a lot of changes with the status quo, especially from Batman's deceit. I'll say deceit, but pretty much just because they don't trust anybody. And ultimately, if you worked for Batman, you worked for Batman first and foremost. Doesn't matter if you're part of the Teen Titans or the Justice League. It doesn't really matter. You're working for him. Batman always has a side plot. He always has that in mind. So with that, there was a lot of change-ups. There was a lot of like mistrust and key personnel shifts, especially toward the end, and actually resulting in Dick Grayson actually bringing up Black Lightning, he's a really strong character in this one. He actually takes over leading the team, and it kind of keep him honest, kind of like in Justice League International, whenever Green Arrow was kind of added in by Batman to keep them honest. And when I say honest, I mean like super liberal and socialism crazy, because that's Green Arrow. Going into the metahuman trafficking, there was a lot has changed since the second season. There's plans divulged typically just to take care of the metahuman tracking. It's actually a really big problem. So there's actually like places you can go, like group homes and facilities that tend to these metahumans that were created pretty much against their will and then trafficked. Darkseid was actually using all these metahumans in a key way to find the anti-life equation, which kind of lands in one of the new characters and became a main character. And her name she goes by Halo, but Violet. Now you find out in the show that Violet was pretty much a mother box, which is New Gods, actually, their technology. So she was like the soul, the life force of a New God tech, which is the mother box, put into a human, which she was actually originally sent in to kill Tara and excuse me, I've lost his name right now. I think it's Geoforce, but actually his name is Brion Markov. Okay, excuse me. So Brion and Tara are brother and sister, and that really kicks off the whole season. Like before we knew about any of these subplots or Darkseid or Granny Goodness pulling anything, it was all about Tara was taken into metahuman trafficking. There was a doctor working in Markovia that was kind of working to kind of create metahumans. Well, she actually was the cause of Tara and Brion actually getting their metahuman abilities, and then she kind of turns them to trust her throughout the episode. And actually, they flee Markovia because metahumans are illegal. Brion and Tara's parents were actually killed. Violet was the one that was snuck in to actually do the job, but she wasn't aware of it because she actually passed away. Violet is the new persona she takes on after the mother box fuses its life force with her. So basically, she doesn't really have many memories from then. But Dr. Jace, who worked in Markovia, she fled with them. Since the throne was usurped by their kind of crazy uncle, he was actually a baron. He has metahuman abilities too. Fight ensued, and they fled the country and also bring along Dr. Jace. So she kind of becomes like the house mother for the Outsiders team. Now, this Outsiders team was formed to be the public eye. So I know there's a lot of covert operations in this, but the whole Outsiders, the whole point of this is to be public about it. They're doing good, and this is pretty much all led by Gar, which is Beast Boy. He is now an actor. He's working full-time on a show, so he's not really a part of the Teen Titans, really. Kind of benched as well. He's doing his own thing. He comes up with this idea that he wants to get out there again. He wants to make it public, inspire hope. We are all outsiders, hashtag. With that, everybody's kind of behind it, but since Batman had his underlying plan with the whole Batman Incorporated thing, he kind of pushed the team in that route to believe they were doing good, but they took advantage of that team to infiltrate places the Justice League wasn't supposed to go in the first place and make changes and kind of facilitate change that way. That's why a lot of people were mad at him. Black Lightning was one of the most. He pretty much walked out and he was done. As I said before, Black Lightning was actually brought in to lead it. He actually had a relationship with Dr. Jace, which was, she was kind of lying to kind of make them trust her, and at the same time they were doing duties to Markovia. There was this servant to the throne. He actually has minor metahuman abilities. Well, he's actually kind of part of the light, which is Darkseid, Vandal Savage, those kind of guys all together, and they are trying to obviously take over the world. So they're kind of using that to influence whoever is in control of the crown. Now, when I spoke about Tara before, disrespecting and totally casting off Slade when she was supposed to actually kill Beast Boy, who was leading this whole Outsiders movement, Lex Luthor, part of the Light, had his own little team, and they don't really do anything in the show. To tell you the truth, it's actually like really a waste of time. They are brought up to kind of like meet the same hashtag level as the Outsiders. So it's like Lex Luthor thought, oh, if I make my own team up and we bring them in and we go against these guys, I can get popular through that way. They'll trust my guys. And then we can overtake it and people will be on my side and listen to what we have to say. Obviously, it doesn't really work out. You don't see them at all. It's actually Infinity Incorporated, I think, is the name of the group. They're like pretty dumb. The only thing you see is like trending on Twitter and stuff like that. You'll see like whenever you see Gar checking his Outsiders hashtag and seeing how it's doing. Granny Goodness captures a few of members of the team. They actually save them. It's back and forth a couple times with Granny Goodness, and this is the time where you find out that basically Halo got her powers from the Mother Box. Throughout the series, she is dating Brion. They get pretty close. Brion grows as a character and becomes a hero, although he does miss and wants to go back to Markovia. Although his parents were killed, his brother is actually king, and once he is tricked into leaving Markovia, the throne is usurped by their Baroness uncle again. As I said before, Tara does not kill Gar. She changes her mind and tosses it to the side. Obviously, everybody's really upset about this, and the Baron will not stop coming. He has similar powers to the Markovs family, which is geo-based powers. So he is covered in like a layer of kind of like rock, and he's fighting Brion. And since Tara stops doing that, they're in a main fight, and he is trapped by Geoforce's powers. He kind of like wraps stuff from the ground, lava and like molten rock, and it like hardens and traps him. He gets out, and he's heavily influenced by the servant to the throne, the kind of day-to-day operations dude, just like kind of like helping out in Markovia to the whoever is in the seat of power, who has the minor metahuman abilities. He actually pushes Brion to straight up murder his uncle. So he murders his uncle and he takes over the throne, actually going kind of evil. They don't know it, but he's being kind of mind warped by the servant to the throne. You also see a lot of change up in personnel, as I said before, much like Aquaman stepped down and that Aqualad, Calderon, he took over actual Aquaman position. So he's in the Justice League, he's Aquaman. He is actually pretty cool in this. He's heavily influenced He's also LGBTQ character, so that's pretty cool. You see Tempest in this, which is like awesome that you see. And then along with all the other characters that are brought in from the metahuman abilities, you see Dolphin is actually brought into it, and her character is done pretty awesome. Now, when I talked about Violet Halo before, she has awesome powers. Every color, every aura is a different power she's utilizing. So ultimately, Darkseid wants to use her, and with her auras, he can use that and find the anti-life equation through her. So that's like the whole point, is getting her. Now, Cyborg is actually in this, and he actually isn't called Cyborg till like the last episode he chooses his name, but in this, he's fused with a father box. So the father box takes him over, and he's kind of like evil, so he can't really control. It's kind of like techno-organic kind of virus, like on Cable. It's kind of like taking over him throughout the season. Towards the end, they actually go and capture Metron, and using the chair, they get Victor onto the chair, and it kind of like purges out the evil and lets Victor take over and let the technology work for him and also he for it. Metron is pretty excited, although he created the mother and the father box technology. So because Halo and Cyborg were created in this from the mother box and the father box, he thinks of them as children and he tells them as such. So it's kind of interesting to be touched on later that Metron's kind of on their side and he's going to kind of be watching out for him. Granny Goodness turns a lot of the population's mindset to mind control using these goggles that came out. They're like a VR technology. All the kids are crazy about them, and that's how she's kind of using them. Much like Ivan Ooze on the Power Rangers movie kind of took over everybody with the purple stuff. This is kind of similar with the VR goggles. So, kind of been done before. She fails. Ultimately, Darkseid is straight up tortures her because he's kind of held off. But that's where we are in it. Bringing an end to the show, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, what everybody was interested in, there was a little bit of a build-up between Roy Harper and Artemis, and they're kind of like, they hint toward having a relationship, but they ultimately kiss at the end, and like, wow, this feels like we're brother and sister, we can't do this. Cheshire doesn't want to come back. She doesn't believe she's a good mother, so she's really been, Artemis is really covering down on taking care of their baby throughout the season. So that's pretty cool. So she's playing mom. The only time she really gets to see Wally, as I said, is whenever Miss Martian and Zatanna trick her into believing that she saw him in Limbo, pretty much to appease her because she kind of misses him a lot, which is really sad. But I was pretty bummed that we didn't get to see it. Moving into what I liked about the show, introduction to new characters were cool. The growth of the existing characters, also cool. And that in many gatherings, you see different characters that we like Green Arrow had like one scene that I remember, and they showed him he had like awesome uniform on. So that was really cool. I didn't like the heavy political stance by like social media and stuff like that, but that's how our world is now, and that's where we're going. You don't see much of the Justice League is what I didn't like. What I also didn't like is I feel like other than Dick Grayson, and due to Aqualad like stepping up to take the role of Aquaman and Superboy hanging back for more in the suburban lifestyle and Young Justice reserves, they didn't really go into why Arthur was not operating actively as Aquaman, which was odd, but I assume that he stepped back to kind of run the kingdom more closely. Setting up a younger team was great, but I felt the drag out of Halo was a little bit long-lived. Along with the trust of Dr. Jace reinstated so easily, it's kind of crazy how it jumps back and forth. But ultimately, at the end, they got a good stopping point. Black Lightning was brought on as more like the leader. Batman kind of stepped back. He doesn't really have a say. And Wonder Woman removed herself as one of the leaders of the Justice League due to her being a part of like the Batman Incorporated whole fiasco. Now, I know I didn't really cover everything. It was kind of jumping around a lot. I didn't want to go too heavy into stuff because I want you guys to kind of watch it. It is awesome. We're already green-lighted for season 4, so that's great. We don't have to wait like how many years for this crap and get a bunch of fans to like lobby against it. So that's cool. Interested in seeing your point of view if you watch the show. If you didn't get to yet, I'm sorry that you stayed this long and got it ruined for yourself. Drop a like, drop a comment. Let me know what you thought about the show. Who is your favorite new character? I'd say Halo's powers are really, really cool. I really liked where Violet went with that. Let me know. And thanks for checking out another episode of Nerdcast. Looking forward to talking to you. Looking forward to seeing what you come up with.